meeting room just to make sure that people that come in get their shot. But we're just about at time. We're officially 3:16 by my clock, and I'm in the EDT time zone. So we're going to get started. So thanks everybody for coming today. We're going to talk about a class that we ran this past year at Fab Lab in New Haven, Connecticut. The Fab Lab is called MakeHaven. We ran our class Foundations of Fabrication. And so we're here today to tell you about it, what that was like, the lessons that we learned, and how it might be useful, what sort of things we have that could be useful for you if you were interested in how to do a class like this for helping adults. So this is a course for everyone. It was the core idea that we wanted to make happen, to make a reality over the past year. We wanted to make sure that it was for people of all backgrounds, whether it's just for fun, if they're just trying to get into fabrication, or if they wanted to do sort of a prefab academy. And this might be a little bit of preaching to the choir for this particular group, but we believe that people need to be able to use tech to unlock our shared creative potential to do all sorts of projects. And so ultimately, Foundations of Fabrication sort of spilled out of those ideas, where we really have the belief that the sum of all of the digital fabrication skills, and then even a broader group of fabrication skills, the sum of all those is greater than the parts, which really fueled our work in this whole game. But here's an overview of what we're going to talk about today. That's sort of the why and the assertion that we wanted to make happen with this class. But here's the plan of how we're going to tell you about that today. First, we're going to introduce MakeHaven, so you have some sense for the context. We'll introduce me a little bit more in case you don't know who I am, and then the other two people who are co-hosting with me will be introduced here. Then you'll get a student's perspective. We'll go over sort of the content, the strategies that we use to actually implement the course, and the lessons learned and the next steps. So first off, we're going to talk about MakeHaven, the place where this all happened, which was new to me. I recently moved from Cleveland to Connecticut, so I'm not from New Haven originally, but I'm happy to be here now. And MakeHaven is a special place, absolutely. When I compare it to other labs that I've been to, it seems like a shining gem among community labs. But JR is here, and he is the head honcho of MakeHaven. And so I'm going to let him do most of the talking about it. So JR?
I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm not seeing it advance.
Oh, all right.
There we go. So just to give you some context of where we are, we're in the United States, in Connecticut, which you can see on the map there. We're located about 3-hour drive from Boston and a less than 2-hour drive from New York. So we're centrally located between those major places, but we are not close enough that it's convenient for a daily commute in most cases. We serve metro size, about 1,500 kilometers, about 800,000 people in the larger region, but our actually city is pretty small. So 50 kilometers or squared, or about 20 miles on a population of 130,000. The city is also has a lot of non-white residents. It's an interesting place, has a lot of disparity. Has Yale University and some other major universities, but you do have 25% of the population living below the poverty line. So this presents some unique challenges. And also, as a region, most recently, this area was rated as the most like the rest of the United States. And so perhaps it's some of the things we learn here applicable elsewhere. We are located within that city very centrally and intentionally centrally on the bus lines. You can go to the next one, Corey.
Cool.
Just the demographics in our lab ourself is that we do have about 65% male, although that trend, we were founded in 2012, it was much more male, and we've been adding more diversity as far as gender, and that trend I expect to continue as we intentionally work on that. Similarly, we have a distribution which shows that it's about a little less than 70% white. So we have other groups represented, but certainly if we are targeting our representation on the city, we have some work to do, and that's something that we've been focused on. And in fact, we have been achieving some of that. So 48% of the new members last year were people of color. And we'll continue to do outreach to make that happen. The classes and educational activities are really part of that strategy, because we see that folks from lots of different backgrounds have lots of different inroads. And we also see that referral and breaking into those networks is really important. We provide scholarships, so 10% of our members receive a sliding scale price. And as one interesting fact that kind of excites me is that more than 50% of the people that sign up say they plan to do something entrepreneurial or to develop a prototype. So it has that the potential to really change people's lives when they join. Next.
Cool. Did I miss one? There we go.
Yeah. This just gives you some physical layout of the space. We're broken up into a metalworking lab, a fabrication lab, a wood shop, and then we have some desk rentals, a tool lending library, a space where you can buy materials, and a media room, as well as a bio lab. So pretty big space at about 10,000 square feet. We have 400 members. We're open 24/7. We service adults. We have 4 staff. We've just added the 4th, and 25 volunteers that keep all the different areas together. Our mission, all of this is for the purpose of equipping people with tools to design, invent, and create. Next.
Let's see. Oh, yep.
Just to give you a sense of the space, here's some digital fabrication capabilities like you see in all the Fab Labs. Next. The textile area is depicted here, which is pretty large and has really been developing and blossoming over the next year, both manual and then digital techniques for textiles. Next. The metal shop, one of the real notable things here is we were able through a grant to get a water jet cutter. That's the tool on the bottom, but also have Bridgeport mills and the real fundamentals that allow people to make things and make real durable things, because we're talking metal. So next. And our wood shop, including Corey here working on our larger CNC. And you see a program with some veterans working on birdhouses and hand tools. Next. This is a shot of our biolab, which is one of our newer initiatives, as well as our brewing setup. We are inspired by what we've seen elsewhere and the community bio work that's been happening that we've seen and been part of. We are building up this capacity and knowledge. Next. So, how are we organized? We have like challenges, essentially these badges where folks can earn a badge in each tool that involves watching a video, taking a quiz, and checking out with a coordinator. So lots and lots of members driving forward on these, but things like Foundations of Fabrication help to give people a platform to start where they can keep learning after that. So they get all the foundational ones and also provide a goal for people to follow. Next. This is just an example of say the table saw. You have the video, there's a button to the quiz, and then there's a group of volunteers with a posted schedule who would do a checkout. We have a checklist where people check out. Next. So just to wrap it up, for us as an organization, the context for this educational activity is really to meet our goals and to fulfill that mission. So it's part of a larger package. The enhancing education comes next to increasing our diversity, comes next to growing our revenue, because we are going to generate revenue both from membership and from the workshop tickets. And it all comes together and was beautifully put together by Corey in our pilot year. So that's our organizational context.
Thanks, JR, for giving us some background on MakeHaven, the place. It's often really helpful in these sorts of presentations to know where you're coming from. And like I said, JR is the leader of MakeHaven and really does a great job putting this community lab together. A little bit about me, in case you don't know who I am. I'm a teacher, is the short version. I teach high school science. I've got 12 years of teaching experience. I was a 2017 Fab Academy graduate, and I've been teaching in a school with a Fab Lab for 6 years, or for 5 years and 1 year at MakeHaven, coaching Science Olympiad, which is sort of, could be lots of growth potential for that to be very friendly with Fab Labs. And I have advanced degrees in how to specialized instruction for people with different backgrounds, or differentiated instruction. And I've put together these sorts of experiences in Foundations, the people up in the top, and then some of my former high school students down there in the bottom. But before I get really into what is in the class, what you want to see is sort of like, what is the student experience, we thought. And so luckily we have one of the students of the class here with us today. And so here is Kate to tell you what it was like for her.
Everyone, I'm Kate. Or you can go ahead and click forward to the next slide. I was a graduate of the 2021 pilot program, now to be continuing Foundations of Fabrication course, which was a lot of fun. This first slide here just shows some of my projects that I completed over the 40 weeks. So if you look in that top left corner, that's a stained glass piece that was done CNC with the water jet. The little coffee table was done with the CNC router. Our dancing Homer sticker was something we did with, I did with 2D design and registration, working with our vinyl cutter and plotter. Underneath that is a little stamp when we were doing some 3D design and 3D printing. To the right there is a chandelier that was done during the wood shop session. Underneath that is a t-shirt quilt, a project that I've been thinking about doing for years, and I finally had some structure and a deadline, which as a maker, I can say, at least for me and for a lot of makers I know, having those pieces really gets you to do all those projects that you have in your head, which is great. In the center there, that's from our bio lab when we did some DNA extraction and replication and looked comparing some of our genes there from the class. On the bottom is from our wearable electronics unit, which is a party t-shirt where you can toggle back and forth depending on how social you're feeling. And so that was from the wearable electronics. And next to that is basically a camera that gives you different light projections when you select different colors, which was from the electronics and soldering area. So this isn't all the projects, but this is just sort of to give you a quick overview. So in a little bit, Corey will be talking about the the different sections, and so you'll have some ideas, and I know he has some examples as well. Corey, if you want to go ahead to the next thing. Another thing I wanted to talk about as a student was some of the different ways that we kind of ran our weeks and our classes. So here is an example of a week where we really worked together as a group. This was during COVID, so it was a little trickier, and we didn't do quite as much together building as we probably would have wanted to in other years. But for certain weeks, we did all come together and work on projects. There was always the option to go off on your own if you had inspiration or experience in a particular area. No one in the class really had experience with composites, so this was an example I chose because we all kind of came together. Up in the top left corner, you see Bobby, who is our facilitator at MakeHaven. He gave us a demo in class during our lecture portion. And then all the other pictures are from us kind of coming together and working with composites on sort of the same project. So we all were doing similar things with our own designs and our own touches. So that was one way that we learned. Going on to the next slide, another thing that we kind of threw in there is we had a couple of wildcard weeks. And these were really nice to have. They kind of came between sessions and they gave us a break to catch up if we were behind on some projects or had some things going on in life, as we all have full-time lives going on. It gave us some opportunities to get caught up, or also, as I've sort of shown here, to do some revision work. So the piece on the left is something that I started making early on. That was, something that I was doing in one of our electronics e-wire and lasering projects, but I didn't get the effect that I wanted. So I used that extra time and the extra learning that I had in between that time and the wildcard week to try out some different things, some other techniques and materials on the lasers and on the routers. And in the end was able to use that time to get to the end result on the right, which was kind of what I more had in mind. So that was a cool opportunity to either revise some work, or also to play around with other things in the makerspace that weren't focused on in the course, things like the acrylic bender or silk screening or things like that. Going on to the next slide, you'll see some examples. So after we worked on all these individual projects for probably about 30 weeks, we started heading into group projects. And the group projects were a lot of fun. Most of what you see here is from the Zen Garden Sand Table project. That's the project that I worked on. There's also one of the pictures is from the automated watering station that the other group worked on. I just have more pictures from the group that I worked with. Something I really liked about the group project work was when we came together, we got to know each other throughout the year. And when we came together, we all had sort of things that we were better at, more comfortable at. So everyone had a chance to shine and to kind of be a leader in a particular area, because all these projects had many components. But it was also a good opportunity that if there's an area you're not quite comfortable with, you can lean on others. And so I could say, I don't feel totally comfortable with the giant CNC. I'm not going to jump in and use it on my own. But if I can go in with these two other people and we can do it together, it gave some extra support, which was really nice to be able to lean on each other and do things and make things less intimidating. So that was a really nice option to have. And then the last thing that I'm going to say about sort of the progress that we had throughout the year, this is just some more examples, and there's many examples of a lot of great projects that came out of these wonderful students that I was lucky enough to work with throughout the many weeks. A few things that I just wanted to highlight that I thought was really interesting. If you look in the bottom there, we had one student, they were retrofitting a van to make like a mobile tiny house. And they were able to, for most of the weeks, utilize that overarching idea to fit it in with what we were doing. So when we're doing electronics, they would work on a security alarm, or when we're doing woodworking, they were building a cabinet. And so all of these became components of their larger project. So there's an opportunity to kind of take it in that way, or to take it in many little ways. Some other cool things that happened is if you look in the top left corner, that is a tufted rug. We were new to having tufting guns in our makerspace, and one of the members really became a star with the tufting guns, and she really enjoyed it, and grew out of that. She's now teaching a tufting gun workshop. So that was kind of a cool evolution for her to have. And then in the bottom left corner is an example of this cloud lamp, and this was developed by one of the makers in the group. She's a natural artist and really wanted to lean into the electronic side, which she had been more intimidated in the past. And through the course, she was able to combine those two. And this actually ended up being a project that was commissioned, that she worked with some hospitals, to a children's hospital, to make these lamps for them. So there's some really cool things like that, and many other examples that came out of the class. And that's just some of what we did. So you'll get to hear about how we did that when we pop back to Corey.
All right. Thank you very much, Kate. That was a great explanation. There were so many cool projects that came out of this year. We just want to share. So let's talk about what this course is and what it was. And first things first, I should say it's not quite canonical fab. So it's not exactly what digital fabrication is in the broader context. It does expand a little bit beyond that, but really, that's because MakeHaven is a space that has more than a Fab Lab by the list. You know, there's a table saw and other tools that aren't necessarily digital fab, but can be really helpful. And the members in this community makerspace really want to learn how to use all those tools. So having a course in symbiosis with what the local environment wants is really an important part of this. So in terms of resources, we built a lot to make this whole course run, just to entertain ourselves, to have fun. It was built on the Fab Play experience that I had being a teacher with a Fab Lab, and there's the Fab Play group back in Cleveland, which is really great. And so for our course alone, for Foundations, there's about 900 slides of information, and all of that is posted on the website. And we're going to give you a URL towards the end. There's also about 90 hours of recorded lessons, because it was during COVID, so we would record our meetings in case somebody couldn't be there, they were quarantined, whatever. And so we have lots of lesson time recorded, and there's lots of examples of ideas of things that you could try, stuff that you could go after. Some of it is very well documented. Some of it is sort of well documented. But that's how it goes. And we're working on trying to get all of this to be improved for future versions as we think about moving forward. And all of it's going to be on the Living Foundations website that we're actively working on trying to make sure is up to date with what we're doing. And so here's just sort of like a overwhelming preview of all the things. There's 36 lessons that we delivered. There's 40 weeks of class that happened, 20 units, and that's a little bit of a squishy number. But we try to stick to 1 hour lectures over the course of a week. And so we're gonna take a look at how these things worked and sort of what the structure week to week was. But we'd start each week with a 1 hour lecture. And so our 20 units here, these are actually, when you get to these slides, these are all links directly to those pages. So you can go straight to them and see what these look like. And each one should have these slides embedded, or if not, we're working on updating those this week. So they'll be up very soon. There's also some explanations of circuits made down here with KiCad, some 3D models, some other things that sort of get grouped in here that aren't necessarily like slides like you do for a lecture. But also all of our lessons are recorded. They're on YouTube. And the big thing that as a teacher, I have to say, over the past year, what I've really learned is that teaching is about interaction. I can deliver a lecture, but that is nowhere near the same sticking power in a student's mind as having hands-on time working on things. And anybody who's a teacher over this past year absolutely knows that. But I just want to say aloud. So it's a neat thing. It really got us to value, for me, the teacher of this Foundations course, and then the students also gave us this feedback that really that hands-on time was the most valuable part. But we do have all these lessons up. If you're interested in watching, you want to share. Some of them are really gems, like the molding and casting units are really great. We have an artist who does molding and casting as a profession, Bobby, who did the composites, designs composite materials for airplane parts professionally. So there's some really great pieces in there, and it's worth giving these a look if you want. But how do you make something like this happen? Those resources we can absolutely hand you. We'll give you links at the end. But how did we make this work? Our strategy was to try and make it a course that's designed to fit full-time lives. You know, this is targeted at adults, people who have jobs and things, and need to make it work around that. And so we had a target of 10 to 15 hours. We were hoping for 10, but sometimes it would wander a little long, as things do. 10 hours a week for students. We wanted to keep the class sizes small to make sure that everybody would get individualized attention. We had 8 people who made it through. We started off with 10, and we lost a couple over time. A year is a long commitment. We give a maker certification at the end. There's a little more on that. And then students can create a portfolio, like Kate sort of showed you hers just in the past couple minutes. And then we put plans in place so that remote work could happen if someone needed, or if they had to miss a week or so, we could get that to work. And so the general structure, since this was mostly built around the week schedule, we would do a lecture and a show and tell on Monday, lecture for the new content, show and tell for the week before. And we'd usually do them in that order. Show and tell came second, just for timing, to make sure that it was just the way that it worked for us. But you could flip that, which is, I think, how they do it in Fab Academy. I'm sure they still do it that way. And then we'd spend a couple days where students would work on things. They'd be given a new concept and a project to work on, an assignment, or they'd be given a sort of open blank check for do something that's woodworking. And then they'd work on it for a couple of days. Then on Thursday, I'd come in and do office hours where I'd hang out in MakeHaven and help people with projects, make sure that everything's on track. All the while, intermittently, we can communicate on Slack, which is just for back and forth messages. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, students would continue on. I feel like really it was the weekend where lots of projects happened, even though it's getting close to the deadline for every week. That's when people have free time. And then Sunday evenings, I'd come in for more office hours, just to make sure to support everybody in crossing that finish line. This is what it really, if you're looking for what the teaching felt like, this is what it felt like. You had 3 days a week where I was in there making sure I was helping people, and then messaging back and forth. But it was a lot of fun. Everybody's excited to do these projects. And so if we're to talk back a little bit from the schedule, think about it more like educational practices. These are fairly progressive for a lot of high schools. And so that's important. Ooh, Liz asked a good question. How many hours for typical students? Typical students would spend 10 to, Kate wants to make sure that I include 10 to 15 hours a week, which is it's kind of a lot, but we have a few very good ideas for how to try and bring that number down. We found that it was often shorter in weeks where we didn't give open-ended assignments, and we'll get back to that. But the teaching practices for this, like I said, are fairly progressive. And so here are some key items. For different schools I've worked in, not all of these are standard things that you'd expect in a school environment, but they're things that I've come to love as a teacher that's used to teaching in a Fab Lab. First off is play is critical for learning. And that's true even for adults. You have to have some time to sort of play with an idea, to have it sink in and be something that you can manipulate in your mind. Show and tell with reflection is essential to make sure that you make sense of things as you're going. My role as a teacher was not really to be the person who had all the answers, but to be a figure it out kind of collaborator. And really probably the most important learning happened while supporting students rather than giving a lecture. It's that time, and anybody who has taught in classrooms with students, doing labs, doing projects, you probably know that is really true. One important thing in this course, because adults have all different backgrounds, is student choice, that they could have different ways to express their skill or to grow their skills while we're going through different topics. And so a big part of that was also doing growth over achievement. And those last two are probably from my background in differentiated instruction, which really is where we're going here. So the next part, I think the secret weapon to make this all work was the differentiated instruction guidance for how this happened. And a good example is electronics. Some people know electronics and code like before they even show up, and others wouldn't, but really want to learn. Ruby's a good example of someone who came in and was intimidated by electronics, but by the end, she's building those lamps, the glowing cloud lamps. And then a few people in our class had some electronics background, and so they had different goals when we were covering these topics. You know, you'd think about, if we're going to spend 2 weeks talking about how to use an Arduino, you'd have sort of beginner tasks and more advanced tasks, while some people were learning just the basics of for loops and programming and how do you compile your code. Other people were trying to program a bare chip using an Arduino as an IDE, or using an Arduino as an ISP. So there's lots of different ways that you can cover these concepts and make sure that everybody's moving forward, that can really lead for a rich and varied show and tell that comes along with it. So there's a lot of fun potential for this as you can differentiate this, and as your pool of resources gets deeper for each one of these different topics. And so one of the neat things in the course is that at the end, we gave a maker certificate. And so here's Ruby with hers. For us at MakeHaven, it's just sort of a celebration of all of these experiences that people went through, all the cool things that you made. We made a little stamp to go along with it on our metal CNC, but it is just to verify that you have that. Right now, we're not tied to a university. We're sort of working on it. I'm looking at you, Cedric. And so we're trying to make sure that those experiences could become more validated, that maybe local businesses would recognize it, or that a university could give someone credit if they wanted to pay for that from the university, that those sorts of things could be tied into this as we wanted to grow it. But really, we're just sort of excited that it worked in the first year through, and now we're going to try and explore those options as we move forward. And so the real lessons learned, the things that we really got from this is, first off, we had our first round success, which was really awesome. It was a lot of fun to do over the course of this past year, and we're going to try and improve and get better. So we have some really concrete ideas that we're going to go over on how to make this better, how to make this work. And so it's really going to be an interesting thing to try and improve as we go through. But we've already made some changes structurally for how we're going to do this next year. We have lots of interest from people in just our local area who want to take the course. So we're excited for round 2. But one of the things that we really learned, and this was a big one that importantly impacts the amount of time it takes from students, is that assignments very, very strongly impact how much time they have, or like their projects that they take on every week. And so open-ended assignments are very easy to assign. I have to say, as the person who's sometimes assigning things, open-ended assignments are very easy to assign, but they're much harder for the students to manage. And sometimes in a class, that's exactly what you want. But in an introductory class where people are trying to explore and they have, they've got kids at home, or they've got a full-time job with maybe overtime, it's not always something that can be quite manageable, especially if you're brand new to a topic. So what we're going to try and make sure that we do is have well-defined assignments next year as we come up to this next round. And we want to make sure that even though a student wouldn't be required to do those specific things, that they're available, so that if someone says, I'm really new to this, I'm not sure exactly how to get my toes wet, we say, like, here's two options, or here's one or two options. If you get this, if you grab this kit that we have for you, you could do this, and it'll take you a few hours to put it together, and you'll learn in that experience, which for all of us is how we got started, right? At some point, you followed some tutorial and just did what was there. And so it's a great way for people to get started. And it's really, we found a good support from those weeks where we had more structure versus those where we didn't. A good example is the Arduino shield that's up here. I designed that and ordered it from one of the fab houses in China. And then the students in the course could make that. And for most of them, it was their first experience soldering, or first experience in 10 years, So it was a great chance for people to have sort of a structured experience that got their toes wet and gave them more opportunity to practice more in the future. But you could always have open-ended. A good example of differentiation is you can always have, well, we're doing circuits, and if you have never soldered, here's a structured example. But if you have, go for it. Do whatever you want to do. Buy a kit and solder that, or design your own board and solder that. There's lots of different ways that you can differentiate and keep people sort of in the same ideas that you're talking about, but meeting them at the level where they're ready to learn. And so another big thing that we learned is that we want to practice integrating those skills that we're learning in the course whenever possible, because we really solidly believe that the sum is greater than the parts. Big shout out to Luciano for reiterating that. I got to talk with them recently. Another thing that we're going to think about as we got towards the end of this, I thought about my experience in Fab Academy and how it relates to this. And I would say that in no way we're trying to say that this is equivalent to Fab Academy at all. It's definitely far slower. It's double the length of Fab Academy and doesn't cover quite as many of the highly technical electronics codes areas. We focus more on the physical builds. But it would give me, if I'm a teacher, often thinking about my regular high school sophomores going on into their junior year, I'm thinking about usually what's their best next class? Like, what should they learn next? And so when I got to that point in the year, it's just a natural phase for a teacher maybe, I started to think about that with the students in our course. Which of them would be really ready for Fab Academy? Which ones could stand to learn more electronics or more code, or could practice a little more with 3D modeling? It's a longer conversation that you're having over the course of a year to really make sure that your Fab Academy enrollees are ready for that sort of a rigor. And so it could potentially serve as a prefab academy, although that is not what we intended it for. We just sort of built it for fun. And then another thing that's really neat about the course is that we plopped in units based on what was in MakeHaven, that there's no like strict requirement to have one particular type of thing that's in the course without being, it's not the canonical fab. And so we lean into that a little bit so that you could sort of choose units that cover the different areas. Like, we realized over the course of the last year to this year that we missed out on a printmaking section. There's a printmaking area in MakeHaven. And so we're going to try and find a way to squeeze that into the schedule for this next round. And so you can sort of pick up and move around units as you need to. Like, our large CNC also broke, so we had to move things around. It's not quite as strict as some of the programs that might exist, because we were building the ship as we were sailing it. And so it's a neat thing that I think you could take little sections of and use them in a partial maker space, like in an elementary or high school. Or you could have little pieces that go in with a full Fab Lab. You could use any of this, and probably you'd have more to add in if you have other machines like a plasma cutter. So there's lots of different opportunities to use these units, and we freely encourage you, please do. All right, and so let's see. We want to review what we went through really quickly. It's always good practice to come back and see these things again. And just a quick breeze through on the questions. I want to see if there's anything. Oh, how many group projects versus individual was one that was asked. And we really did like a month-long group project where we were sort of, if you've done Fab Academy, it was sort of like the machine mechanism, those weeks where you build a CNC. Ours weren't both CNC machines, but they gave that group experience. It was really one, although there were several people that collaborated on weeks throughout the thing. It was a little bit organic in that way, but we had one institutionalized, I guess, group project that came towards the end. So reviewing, we talked about MakeHaven up at the front, the space. We introduced me, so hopefully the person that you know. The student's perspective, I think, was really wonderful. The course content we're going to link to in just a second, and then some strategies and the lessons learned. So what are our next steps now that we've done this? What are the things that we want to do and that we would invite you to do if you're interested? Our next steps are to be ready for the 2022 class at MakeHaven, which is just about 6 weeks away. We hope to start that class from when we're having this talk right now. We want to break the course into sections. We did the last one as like a whole year, you're in or you're out, but we want to break it up into pieces so that if, major life events happen, we can more easily accommodate that with some schedule flexibility, and also to put in more opportunities for group or mini final projects throughout the course, because we found that those are very valuable. And we heard that that's something that works well in the Barcelona lab. And so let's see, we also want to bring in co-teachers so that it's not just me that's teaching it, not because I don't enjoy it, but because we want to make sure that in many ways it's future-proof. If something were to happen to me, or if I moved to Connecticut, if I moved away, it would still be able to sustain itself without being just my baby. And so we're going to try and do that and define all of our intro-level assignments. We also want to find a way over the next year or so to adapt this for schools, universities, or businesses to really acknowledge what's going on here, to define our evaluation methods, which are fairly free form, but if it's being validated by an institution, they may want more like checks on how people perform. But how to implement it at a university, focus on sort of the higher skills rather than just tools. Those are all sort of goals for our next steps. And then what we really hope for you is that you could read through this content and make your own local version of our Foundations of Fabrication course. We had such a delightful time doing it that we hope you could enjoy it too. Our website for it is at makehaven.org/foundations. There is a YouTube playlist that's linked through there. You can find MakeHaven on YouTube, and then it's one of the playlists that they have. If you have any questions about just generally instructing it, we're going to have a Q&A session in just a second. We've got a little bit of time. But if you have questions that you'd like to write out for any reason, and Kate put the playlist in the chat. Thanks, Kate. If you have any questions for me about sort of how the course ran, I'd be happy to answer them at corey.rice@makehaven.org. Or if you want to know like how much students paid, how does MakeHaven run, how do they pull off being such an amazing community lab, you can email jr@jr.logan@makehaven.org. And so that is sort of the spiel. And we have a few minutes left, which is great. I'm excited that we didn't totally jam up the time because I want to give a chance for people to ask any questions that you have. And it looks like I saw one in the chat.
Yeah, Corey, there was one question, a great question, I thought. It said, did somebody come up to build a solution for a community problem? I love that, and I love that idea. If I'm understanding the question correctly, the short answer would probably be no. We had a couple of little projects that kind of helped MakeHaven a little bit. Yeah. Do you have it? Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I think I'd like to, if I'm assuming the right thing about the question, I think I would say, the one thing that we did that was really sort of dog fooding was the automated garden. We had these plants in MakeHaven that need watered regularly, and our Fab Lab manager does a great job of dutifully watering them. But the automated watering system was so that it could be done at the push of a button, right? Or that it would be on a schedule, although I think a button push is good so they don't accidentally spill without someone there. But yeah, so a little bit of that, if I'm assuming that that's the question.
And
the
we
right
also, we've, MakeHaven has done work in the past with other organizations to build like little free library kind of things.
Oh, yes.
We came together with like the local land trust and New Haven Reads, and we, built these little free library things. And so through the course, we did work together to try to build sort of a CNC easy to do project for that could then translate into helping more of these be created for the community, be they for books or for toiletries and food items and things like that. So that's another kind of area that could go in.
Yep.
Corey, we have a question. Did you do a module on creative design thinking or iterations testing?
Oh, we did. We had, that was our lecture that ran very long because it's just a thing I care about. We did a unit on that, just about how to generate ideas, sort of how do you get the brain flowing, and then some of the pitfalls that can happen with scope creep and those sorts of things. So we did have a unit of that. And we look forward to including that, but it was definitely sprinkled throughout the entire course also. It was not something that you can do in isolation. When you're talking about projects that have to be tidied up in a week, you're often talking about how do you brainstorm, how do you make them happen, and how do you close that loop?
Another question we had that Corey mentioned part of was talking a little bit about the breakdown and how many projects did we have. I put some information in the chat, but just for the official recorded record, talking about how many individual projects versus group projects. In our model, what we did is we just took, most of the units were 2 weeks. Some of that meant a 2-week long project, but sometimes that meant 2 projects, 1 for each week. So we had between 16 and 20, I'd say, individual projects. Now we often relied on each other and worked together a little bit, and there was collaboration throughout on a smaller scale. But then in the end, we wrapped up with a 4-week group project and a 4-week individual project. So that's kind of how that broke down.
Yeah, great. Gustavo, it looks like
yes.
you have a hand raised. If I said your name right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Corey. First, I wanted to congratulate all of you for the effort and pulling this together. It's amazing just getting to know it. It seems that it was a great course. And I wanted to speak a little bit because here in Brazil, the mindset of everyone that takes this kind of courses or looks into it, they try to find it in a way that they can get a job after taking the course. Mm-hmm. So mainly because, for instance, it's hard to run Fab Academy here for this reason. People, if they are investing $5,000 or $2,000 in a course, are they able to get a job after it to pay for the course? Basically, that's the main question. And it's been hard to sell this kind of open models where you learn a bunch of skills, you have a portfolio of different things, but not necessarily you can apply to get a job. So it seems that you guys are working on getting certifications and companies that would use these diplomas. But I wanted to hear a little bit more regarding this issue, because for us it's been a difficult task to deal with.
That totally is that's a question that's on our radar. Absolutely. And just for context, in the United States, often you need to pay for college. So people are more used to ponying up for entertainment engagement, whereas in a lot of the world, there's more access to education, which I am jealous of. But it makes sense that yes, it makes sense. And so we're trying to get connected. A big player in the Fab Foundation game is Cedric Fleming, who's probably in here somewhere, and he teaches at a university nearby. So we're sort of working with him to see how can we draw out those relationships? How can we make sure that works? We're looking into relationships that we have with businesses to see if you have an employee who does this, do they get something? What we'd really love to have happen is to work around teacher certification, teacher like professional development, to have it be something that could be recognized there, where maybe it's not, as a teacher, I regularly have to pay for grad classes or something just to keep my certificate. And so if this could serve as a way to save that certificate, and I'm learning new skills, that are useful for students at the same time, then it's something that adds that value. And so it's definitely something that feels like it's going to have to be bartered in any local environment. But if we have any secret sauce for that, absolutely we would share it. We're just getting started with those discussions though. And if you have any
That's
ideas,
awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep in touch with your email. I have it now, so we can discuss it further later. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Let's see. It is officially 4 o'clock, which is our scheduled end time. But I want to make sure that anybody who has a question and we're here, we can answer it. Let's see. All right. Well, it's 4. And so I don't want to have us sit around just for the sake of sitting around. So I want to thank everybody profusely for coming. We're really excited about what we did. We're really excited that we got to share it this way. And hopefully some of these resources can be useful for you. And if you have any questions or you find that we have a broken link or something, send us a message. We'd be happy to help collaborate and make all of this work for the betterment of everybody.
If we're not going to get kicked out, I did just get a couple of questions just thrown out real quick.
Sure.
So one of the questions was, how do you promote these programs? How did we get the word out? Which I don't know if you or JR or me, but anyone want to take that?
Go for it, JR.
So we have an email list. Fortunately, as a makerspace, we have a community that's building. So that's a built-in audience of people who are interested. We also are doing an information session. So just essentially going through these stories. When we did our celebration at the end, we made it open to other people. And I would say that one of the biggest recruiting things is probably going to be that I know many people saw these projects happening because the makerspace is active. It's not exclusive to the Foundations students. And so there's a lot of questions and a lot of people saying that they were interested. So we already have a long list of people interested in joining this year. And we will do interviews and narrow that down.
Yeah. And the promoting was fairly aggressive last year because we were brand new, but it really feels like it has become sort of organic from people seeing projects happen over the course of the year from our internal members. And then we have people who are interested from outside of MakeHaven who've heard of it or word of mouth. Let's see. Any other questions come through that I missed?
JR did answer in the chat, but we are, MakeHaven is a not-for-profit makerspace.
Oh yeah, and I think it's worth saying you're next door to Yale, but not a part of Yale. Many Yale people come to us, but it's not like a branch of Yale. Let's see. All right. So if we've gotten all the questions, I'm gonna stop the recording in case that's someone's barrier to entry, and then I'll hang out for a few more minutes and we can talk about whatever.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. Hey, Cedric.
Hey, congrats, guys. This is awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun.
You didn't stop the recording, though.
Oh, yeah, I can't. It wouldn't let me. They're doing that in Montreal.
Host.
Montreal is, I don't know. Oh, JR is the host.
Hello. Hello, Fab Haven.
Hey, Jeffrey.
I joined very late. I basically missed your entire presentation, but I'm starting a Fab Lab in Malawi, where I'm connecting from at the moment. But I'm coming back to the U.S. in 10 or 11 days, assuming I'm not COVID positive, and I'd love to visit your Fab Lab and see what you guys are doing, because I'm, starting this thing has been quite an adventure and quite difficult in a, one of the poorest countries in the world. And I was on one of the other workshops a little earlier, once sponsored by I can't remember his name, but he's UNDP guy. And one of the things that was discussed there was sustainability and how to make your Fab Lab, which in this case is in our case is going to be it's a not-for-profit, and we're going to do training in various disciplines. I'm an electrical engineer and a software engineer of many decades, and we're starting it with a sustainability model built in, which is different, and I think it's different than most Fab Labs that I've met through this network. And so, yeah, just coming and seeing it, seeing various examples, and I stay in Western Mass, so which is why when I saw, New Haven, okay, it's going to be on my way. It's going to be on my way home from the airport next Sunday, after a grueling 36-hour travel. So, and is your Fab Lab, because I missed the whole talk, is it operating because of COVID, or
JR, you want to take it?
Yeah, it is operating. Mask required. We haven't yet, but we may move to vaccinations required in the near future.
And our AstraZeneca approved, since that's all we get in in Africa.
No, I think that would be if we haven't, that would be fine.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. No, it would be good. How big is your space, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, about 10,000 square feet.
Nice. A
little more.
What I'm starting is 600 square meters. We're in meters here. So and it's been a real challenge. I have to say, even we're still waiting for power to be connected. Because that can be a journey all, in and of itself. So anyway, I really just came on just to say hi and, find out if you're taking visitors and
yeah, we are. So, Sunday we might not be around, so that's to email us.
Oh, it wouldn't be Sunday for sure. I'm just saying I'm on my drive from Newark to Western Mass. I'll be passing by New Haven.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always click the link to tour or email us. And we're always happy, particularly to other spaces that are, picking up information, happy to accommodate that.
Okay. Yeah, I have some connections to some of the maker spaces at UMass through the electrical engineering department. There's actually UMass has more than a dozen maker spaces on campus. So they're quite active, and it's the closest sort of mini network for me. Anyway,
Cool. Well, nice to meet you. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Nice to meet you guys too, as well. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Fab Lab, Winham. You're hanging out. What's up? Oh, don't know if I can hear you. Oh, yep.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Yes, I'm from Fab Lab, based in Kisumu, Kenya, and We were doing Fab Academy. We did Fab Academy twice. That is in 2019 and 2020. But 2021, we were not able to get students because, of course, the obvious reasons of high cost and all that. So I joined later, but I'm really interested to understand how you run your training so that we see if we can work around with such a model to be able to get more students, because we have so many people who should be getting trained. Actually, in Kenya, I think the total number of people who have been trained are less than 10. We should be around 6. I was the first one to be trained in Kenya. Then later on, I created Fab Lab, and we only have 3 Fab Labs in Kenya. So we have so much great potential, but we have exploited it because of high cost and of course very little support from the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've got a fair amount of struggles, and we can happy to share whatever we can. All of our resources are out there and they're free. So go for it. Please use them. And if there's anything that you can, where we can have a longer conversation about support, happy to. Yeah, Fab Academy is something that we thought about initially, but didn't want to run because you really have to have very committed people who want to be in it, and that's not always where we're at.
That is great. So the numbers in Africa will be growing.
You were the #1 in Africa before COVID. That's pretty cool.
The African Fab Labs have not been so much big, and we are happy if the numbers can increase so that we can be able to actually develop the African network.
Cool. That sounds neat. That's awesome. Cool. All right. It is all cruising in on 4:15, everybody. I feel like we should, if we're all good, then I think that we should say thanks for coming, everybody. We're excited that you are here. Anything that we can do to help in the future, let us know, reach out, and excited to see if this can grow and how we'll make it work over the next couple of years. So thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.